Hello, and welcome to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am your host, as always, Josh Carr, and we're in the new setup. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I'm in my office. It's a little bit bare at the moment. I've very quickly decorated this bookcase that is precariously balancing. So if this crushes me halfway through, just we'll go with it. I've balanced some things on there. But most importantly, I have a fantastic guest with me, as usual. And that guest, for the first time, I get to say this, which is quite exciting. I'm joined by a doctor. It's the one and only Mr. Jonathon Carley. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Just as well you've got a doctor, just in case your bookcase does fall
Yeah,
on you. So I'm on
yes.
standby. I've got 999 on speed dial.
Yeah.
Don't know how much time that's going to save, but
yes. I mean, I just want to, for anyone at home, I mean, I know this is a Doctor Who podcast, not a DIY podcast, but please drill your bookcases into the wall so they don't fall, not like I have.
It's not worth the risk.
I will do it at some point. I just don't have any drill bits at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, like I said, if I get crushed halfway through, Jonathon, it's all on you. It's this you run with it.
No pressure.
No pressure. But as usual, we are here to talk about, as you so wonderfully put it in your tweet about the podcast, the wonderful world of Docky Who.
Docky Who. Where did that come from? Where did
Docky
Who come from?
It just sort of comes naturally to me. I call it Docky Who quite a lot, and I know people must hate it, but I just think it's quite a funny name, isn't it? Docky Who.
You've made it your own. You've made it.
Yeah. But yes, we're here to talk about Docky Who and the wonderful world in it. And you don't get many more people as involved in the world of Doctor Who as you do with Jonathon. So, in terms of your life as a fan, because obviously it's developed slightly over the past couple of years.
Just a bit,
I think
yeah.
You'd agree. Yeah,
things have escalated.
Yes. So in terms of being a fan, I always like to start at the very beginning, because I think people love to hear the stories of how people became fans of Doctor Who. Where did it all start for you?
Oh, well, that's a deeper, meaningful question. Going back through the mists of time, and a few people have actually, of course, asked this. So I try and think of a slightly new take or new detail each time, just to keep it fresh. And I'm trying to think to the earliest possible memory, because I'm a child of the wilderness years. I was born in 91, but somehow weirdly throughout all that, the image, the iconography of like a Dalek, is present in that distant memory. May not necessarily have known what it was, but it was there. And I recall one year around Christmas, my mum was getting Christmas presents for all the family, and she picked up, of all things, Destiny of the Doctors, the infamous PC game,
Yes.
which was just laid out, and I think it was earmarked for my cousin. I can't recall whether he had any interest in it at the time, because he was only a year or two older than me. But I remember the box, which had a Dalek, a very badly like photoshopped Cyberman with half of the handles like keyed out, and a Silurian from Warriors of the Deep, which how obscure can you get?
Yeah, so that is quite obscure, isn't it? And I mean, funnily enough, this is actually obviously you aren't to know this, because at the moment of recording, the first episode isn't out. This is actually the second time that
Really?
Destiny of the Doctor has been mentioned.
Yeah.
It's the second time, because my first guest in this series, Clever Dick Films, also cited it as something that he picked up during the wilderness years. But yeah, I mean that, because infamously now it's mainly known as the meme of the master driving the little red car.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. I adore that meme. But
well, funnily enough, I think it's Anthony Ainley filmed all those inserts. It was the last thing he ever did for Doctor Who. And I actually think it's one of, if not his best performance in the part,
Yeah.
bizarrely.
Yeah.
Because as things panned out, that game I ended up opening that on Christmas Day myself. And obviously I had no context for it because I didn't know what Doctor Who, I knew the name Doctor Who, but I had no connection to it. It wasn't on TV. I didn't have Sky, so I'd never seen it on UK Gold or anything. So I just had this game. So it was just this curiosity. And I can recall putting it in the CD player and not in the CD player, in the computer and booting it up and just being baffled actually, because he opens with Anthony Ainley giving this rundown of all the incarnations of the Doctor, which takes on a whole different meaning when you suddenly when you're more familiar with it. But it was like some sort of weird form of brainwashing really early on, introducing me to all the incarnations, and then it just deposits you in the game with no instructions, no context, just in the TARDIS control room, which I didn't know that's what it was at the time. It was just a TARDIS control room with a massive photo of John Pertwee on the wall. And you're just like roaming around looking for something to click. And then it opens up this database with these really bad, really low res like screen captures from episodes that you can't see. And occasionally you'll get like a 4-second clip from something. Like for the Fifth Doctor, his entry is a clip from Resurrection of the Daleks where he glances across and says, "Hurry, come on." And that's it. That's all you need to know about the Fifth Doctor, according to this game.
It sums up the Fifth Doctor quite well.
Kind of, yeah.
A lot of frantic running around.
I don't know how much of that was accident or design. But then, after a few goes, I'd sort of exhausted this data. It meant nothing to me because just words at this point. And then ventured out of the console room, and then I'm being attacked by this really weird angular. It was 1996. What do you expect? This really, really poorly rendered Auton, which scared the crap out of me. I was like, nope, this game is cursed. I can't play this ever again. But then fast forward a few years, and I'd seen my mum one day in the summer holidays, just stuck on Channel 4 one afternoon and said, "There's something on. I think you might like this." And it was Daleks Invasion of Earth with Peter Cushing. And I was, at that time, it was probably the early 2000s, 99, 2000. And Thunderbirds was really, really big and having sort of renaissance. So with Daleks and that, so from the same time, riding the coattails of this current revived trend, that sort of link, clicked with me. And I was mesmerized by it, and then I started doodling Daleks in MS Paint. And then the question was, right, now how do you actually pursue this really? Because I'd seen something I liked, but it's like, okay, where do I get more? Because by all accounts, Doctor Who had faded into obscurity by this point. You'd had the movie, which I was oblivious to, and that was kind of like considered the last shot. So and then again in summer holidays, I'd go to my dad's work office when if my mum was busy or just fancied a day off from looking after me, and he'd stuck the Doctor Who website on the computer, where you could watch various clips on the Real Player, which was the early video player, which was completely unfit for purpose.
I think I just about remember that. I think I must have just caught, because I think I'm slightly younger than you, so I caught the back end of those years, I think.
Yeah, it was not the ideal way to really experience the nostalgia of Doctor Who, but somehow I must have persevered. And then it came to one Christmas, and I got this will make you laugh. Another obscure thing. I got the comic relief special, The Curse of Fatal Death, on VHS. Because nice. I can only assume my mum had seen, Doctor Who, and seen Mr. Bean on the cover and thought, right, this is perfect. Little knowing what it actually was. But it's just as well because you can't buy it on home media anymore. So it's a bit of a collector's item now. But to compensate, I also got a couple of other videos at Christmas and birthday after. So it all kind of grew from there, and the rest is history.
Lovely. I mean, I don't think we've had such an obscure entry to Doctor Who before. I mean,
It's unique.
so
It's unique.
just to recap, so Destiny of the Doctor, and then it would have been the Peter Cushing movies, and then obviously Curse of Fatal Death. Probably before you've seen, most. I think the Curse of Fatal Death is probably a really good place to start, because it sort of it gives you everything you need to know about Doctor Who, really.
Well, yeah, it's a distillation. It's a bit tongue in cheek, and I think it kind of primed me just to say, look, it's great, we love it, people love it, but don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
It's made with love. Everything about it is made with love, and we adore it. But you've got to take the rough with the smooth,
Yeah.
and just that ability to have the sideways glance and just have fun with it. The important thing about Doctor Who is just to have fun with it first and foremost. I think is kind of the spirit that's led me to where I've gone on to, and it didn't break me, so it can't have been all bad. But I don't think you could design that journey at all. If you was to say, okay, find a child and just as an experiment, put them through this obscure, recreate this obscure journey and see what they come out with, they'd just be confused, very confused.
Definitely. So I mean, following that, so obviously, I imagine what would be a few years after that, you've then got the Revive series coming back.
Yeah.
So what was your? Because I'm always interested as well. We've had a few people on, like Richard from Clever Dick Films is also a child of the Wilderness years. Billy Garrett John was also he was sort of he's around the same age as me, so he's prime age for the Revival, but somehow stumbled into like classic Who before the Revival came back.
It's weird how it finds people.
Yeah, it really is.
A show that isn't even on the air and hasn't been on the air for the best part of 16 years finds people and new young people, and they just get hooked.
Yeah,
it's a magical thing.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things now is seeing. Obviously, I'm quite new to classic relatively. It's only over the past year or two that I've started getting really into classic Who. I've always been aware of it and watched big clips and chunks of episode and the odd episode here and there, but I've really hooked onto it. But it's lovely seeing young people like around my age who have grown up with Doctor Who, and they're going back and rediscovering classic, or people just going straight in with classic for the first time is I mean, it's a bold move, but I really love that.
Go for it.
I love so yeah, what I was going to say was essentially I love hearing people who are fans of Doctor Who in the Wilderness years, that they're not to sound like this is a bad thing. There's sort of like an ownership of Doctor Who to those people, because it's been taken out of the public eye, and it feels like something.
It just feels like your thing, the thing that only you know about. Like you stumbled across the Aladdin's cave, and it's like, I've got to protect this at all costs.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've found when speaking to people, and then 2005 rolls around, and it's everyone's thing. It's the biggest. It becomes the biggest.
It gets out of control. TV. It's got a life of its own. It becomes the phenomenon.
It does. Yeah, probably in a way that it hasn't been since the mid 70s. What was your reaction to it when it came back? Because I mean, just doing a little bit of quick maths, you were probably around about mid-teens, is that right? So quite a...
Yeah, I can remember it was first year of secondary school. I think the announcement came that it was coming back, but I hadn't really been that engaged with it for long enough to really appreciate the fact that it wasn't on or hadn't been on for that long. So it was just kind of, it was more a case of it was gaining traction with me and my own interest. And then it was just a cursory announcement on, I can remember it being announced on Radio 2, waiting for the school doors to open and announced that Doctor Who is coming, because it would have been 2003. And just thinking, oh, that's quite convenient. Some more Doctor Who coming along. That's just for me. And but not really appreciating the fact that it was going to just, well, no one knew how big it was going to ultimately become. But not really appreciating the fact that it was going to be out there and other people were going to see it for the first time. So it's just a case of, Doctor Who was what it was for me. And it's like, oh, another series is coming along straight after, right on cue. So it was quite, well, it was very convenient in a
Yeah.
way. And, I, as it got closer to it coming on, because I mean, let's be honest, it was best part of 18 months. It was all being like prepped and happening from the announcement to actually airing. It was, gaining traction, and my interest was really growing in that time, and the questions were being raised over, is it going to be the Doctor Who that I know? And, what is it going to be like? Um, and then other people started asking questions like, "Oh, Doctor Who, there's a new program starting on BBC One this weekend called Doctor Who. It's some old show that was on in the '70s." And then suddenly my ears were pricking up and saying, "Oh, other people do know about this. How do I play this here? Do I keep cool about this, or do I engage? Because, like you say, it was sort of my little sort of safe space, my little haven.
Yeah.
And the idea of it sort of getting out, or other people getting in and being able to form judgments on it, because again, another weird thing was, because it was that obscure, other people couldn't really form judgments on it because they didn't understand what it was. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So that was a real sort of, you know, a real strange sort of transition moment of it entering the real world for me. And I'm sure experiences varied, because obviously I was in secondary school, so I don't know whether it was quite the right target audience for them. Maybe they were like slightly too old to really get on the hype train, because
Yeah.
I was in third year of secondary school by that point. So that's year 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that, take it or leave it age. So I was, unconditionally attached to it. I was obliged to engage. But there was a few people that, I knew watched it and, were asking questions every now and again. Um, but then on the other hand, there's the not so nice side where people, do take the mick, because, it's the gates are open, the floodgates are open, and people can, form opinions and be they positive or negative, and kids are like that at that age, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a game of two halves, but yeah, as it grew, and I knew, like, in the grander scheme of things, it was, really loved and appreciated. And as time goes on, as people mature, the people that were following it, and I connected with more of those people later on in, like, college years. There were people that watched it casually, and the people that were fans, and
Mm.
it became a lot more of a generally positive experience, because like I said, people were having fun with it rather than taking it too seriously or using it as a stick to beat people with.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just one of those things. And again, having got even older, got into the real world, you out of education and that. Still every now and again, I stumble across people who absolutely passionately adore it, and other people who watch it casually, and other people that have stopped watching it, unfortunately, but have very strong positive memories
Yeah.
of when it was big. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a real eclectic mix of people, but when you come across them, it's something that you can instantly bond with people over,
Yeah. It's
which is
like
beautiful.
I genuinely think the only one of the only comparables for me to Doctor Who would it sort of reminds me of like a football mentality,
Mm,
like this like this cultish like adoration that people have for the show,
yeah.
and like I like, because I'm quite a big football fan myself, and like my go tos are usually it'll be, oh, do you like football, because that's a nice icebreaker.
Mm.
But every now and then I'll spot someone and I'll think, I'm going to try this. I'll go, do you watch Doctor Who? and every now and again you get a gem, and hours are lost in conversation, and you just connect with someone immediately. It's great. It's always great. I love meeting Whovians out in the wild. It's so fun because, like you said, it's such a brilliant mix of people, and it's like the stories you told about finding Doctor Who and how it finds people itself, and everyone's got their own stories behind it, and it's so lovely.
What's really wonderful, like more recently, and with the modern series, is that one huge thing that it did was it broke the mold of what a Doctor Who fan was, because it really appealed to different genders and different ages, and all people of different backgrounds, rather than just being sort of stereotypical sort of middle-aged male fan.
Yeah.
And now you kind of look at anyone and think anyone could be a Doctor Who fan. So it's kind of like, some people bizarrely see that as a negative thing, but it's great. Why would you not want more people that are engaged with this, that can join in the conversation? Because, like you're saying about football, is that, again, it's kind of something that does have a sort of stereotype of a fan, i.e. a gender stereotype. But, you've got women's leagues and everything, and women can be fans of the men's leagues and everything as well. But if you're like in a pub or wherever and you start a conversation about football, suddenly you've got a crowd around you and everyone's got an opinion on something or other, and no one dares tell you to shut up or say, right, that's enough, let's talk about something else. But for some reason, if you did the same about Doctor Who, and just that was the only sort of train of thought you ever had, I mean, me personally, I kind of feel guilty. Like, I don't want to bring this up too much or too often, or if at all, because I don't want to bore people to death. But people don't feel the same way about football. It's like they could go on for hours, and if anything, they're encouraged to.
No,
and if anything,
I understand that. Yeah,
why not take that mentality and say, no, you're talking about something you like, you love, you feel passionately about. I want to hear more about this. Please go on. But somehow we've kind of got this anxiety of like, no, I don't want to bore people. I want.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes it can yield quite surprising results. Like, there's people that I've chatted to at work who like have like they knew I was a Doctor Who fan, and they'd always say like never interested in Doctor Who. Probably I don't even think they've ever seen an episode. Like it's just completely passed them by. But I remember it was a few weeks ago, and I was explaining, I think it was when the Evil of the Daleks pre-order came out.
Right, yeah.
And I was quite excited at work when that came out. And I was like, oh, I just have to sneak off and pre-order this really quickly because I want to get it. And one of my friends at work was asking me about it. And I was like, they were like, well, why is there an animated Doctor Who episode? Like, what does it mean? And I was like, oh, it's because
okay,
it's because the BBC.
Sit back.
Yeah, it's because the BBC burned like a few decades ago, and they were like, what? And they were fascinated by the concept of like missing episodes, and there's so like it's actually something that like as fans we probably take for granted a little bit. How mad it actually is, and how mad some of the weird corners of the Doctor Who universe are. But yeah, they were absolutely fascinated. They were like, why did they bin them? Why? I was like,
they're probably going home and just laying awake at night thinking, the BBC made a load of programs, then burnt them.
Yeah.
What?
By the time I was done with them, they were lying in bed going, where's Marco Polo? Where is it?
Phoning all their friends and relatives saying, check your loft and your garden shed.
Yes. If you find a reel, give it to me. Yeah. I'm just really quickly, it's just getting really dark. I'm just going to quickly.
Yeah, you're fading away.
Yeah.
It's like a really slow, dramatic fade to black.
Sorry about that. I mean, obviously, one thing that I want to speak to you about a lot is your acting work with Big Finish. I'm also intrigued about where that started, because I personally, I'm not a professional voice actor, but I've always been one of the people who everyone says you like they do voices like Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire, like
I
you
do a
do
great impression of
voices.
a hot dog. Can't see that on audio, can you?
But yeah, I've always been fascinated by impressionists and voice actors, and you know actors from like voice actors from animations and things like that. It's always fascinated me that world of you know being an actor and getting to live that fun, but no one sees your face. I don't know why. It just fascinates me. Obviously, you're a voice actor yourself.
Hmm.
But where did that start? Was that parallel to Doctor Who, or did it come later in life?
Oof. That's a really tricky question, and I've not got a definitive answer for you ultimately, because like my career trajectory has been quite scattershot, and a
Hmm.
lot of it has happened purely by accident. So I can by no means give anyone, you know, a point by point guide of how to get into voice acting at
Yeah,
all. But like I've always been able to do voices or impressions, and it was just a fun thing to do, almost like a party trick, you know, that you do. You know, you're just that guy. That's your thing.
yeah,
And you know, a very close friend of mine, you know, has repeatedly said, it's like, you know, you should really get into voice acting. And I was like, nah, no, it'll never happen because, um, you know, like you say, when you watch like cartoons and that as a kid, you don't really appreciate that. You know, there's a person, you know, at the end of a microphone who
yeah,
is giving these characters life. You're just kind of looking at the visuals and taking the voice as coming through them. That's just how we connect these
yeah.
things, and that's fundamentally the job of the of whatever you happen to be watching, be it cartoon or whatever.
Hmm.
But when you break it down, you see, oh yes, actually, this is someone's job. There is someone who sits in a booth and just, you know, goes nuts basically, and they get paid for that. Um, but then there's the other side of it. We think, okay, that's someone's job, but it's not a job I can do because that's going to be, you know, they are professional actors. They are in London or they're in Hollywood or wherever.
Mm.
And where would you even start? Because I'd never done drama or anything through school. Like in my education, it was, you know, the creative arts was always something that was kind of, you know, not frowned upon, but was kind of looked down on, because the only outlet for like drama they had was, you know, the one Christmas play that they do each year,
Yeah,
and that was it. If you weren't in that, then, you know, that, sorry, mate, that's your lot. So kind of almost like in rebellion to that, like through college and then university, I went into studying like multimedia and media production, um, because, yeah, partly because of well, yeah, because of Doctor Who, and I think Doctor Who Confidential played a big part in that, really, because
yeah,
again, it's kind of lifting the veil of showing this is a job, this is what people do, and this is how they put um, food on the table. And you think, no, that can't be. They're having too much fun. That's not a job. You know, how are people paying them for this? Um, but you know, there's something about Doctor Who fans where I think something inspires them to be creative and to engage. And you know, I had no ambitions of, or realistic ambitions of, working on the program or anything like that, but I could work in that field somehow, or at least have a shot.
yeah,
So yeah, that's what I did through college and then university. So it's all behind the camera production based stuff. So all the technical things and all that. Um, but the voices thing, um, I'd done a couple of my own things sort of on the back of it. Of just I did uh, back in the heyday of figure animations. I did something to commemorate the basically Matt Smith's introduction, really,
yeah,
called The 10 Doctors. And obviously, you're not that well connected or even necessarily that confident to ask other people, like, oh, excuse me, can you voice people in my thing with action
yeah,
figures, please? Um, so I thought, I'll just do it all myself.
Yeah.
and to hell with it. So I voiced all the different doctors, and it was Stuart Humphreys, better known perhaps as Babel Colour, who also did a series called The 10 Doctors, who left a very kind comment saying about my David Tennant voice. He said, that's brilliant. And I said just a casual reply saying, if you ever want some extra lines, I'd be more than happy to. And he took me up on it. And
Yeah.
he was getting many, many, many more views than I was. And this was back before YouTube became the complex beast that it now is,
Yeah.
managed by algorithms, where you could actually achieve something and get some recognition and build yourself from the ground up. And sort of that partnership is still running to this day. I still help him out every now and again, and I'm hugely grateful for that. But then it kind of opened the doors to working with other people who were asking for stuff, and I was more than happy to oblige. But then as time went on, as I got older, I kind of had to start saying no to things because I was busy. I had to concentrate
Yeah.
on other things, and kind of, you know, you can't say yes to everyone. It's just not feasible because you'll never have any time to yourself.
Yeah.
And it kind of just fizzled out, really. But I kept my ears open, and like I said, whenever Stuart came along asking for anything, or any other people came along with a proposition that appealed, I'd say, okay, I'll make an exception. And a chap called Luke Oliver got in touch a few years ago now, asking for a 12th Doctor voice,
Yeah.
because I'd started just doing it was in the early 2000 2010s, it would have been 20 teens, I suppose it is, yeah. And I just started doing, it was when people were handing out speeches at conventions to like actors who had played the Doctor and said, this is another Doctor speech, can you do it? And they
Yeah.
just do these cold reads. So I thought, okay, let's try it with things that aren't necessarily possible, like either doctors who are no longer with us, or doctors who are with us but aren't doing conventions yet, like Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, etc.
Yeah.
And I did a few of these, and they took off really. They came down really well. I did the anti-war speech from Zygon Inversion, and Luke picked up on that and said, "I want you for this thing," and the deal breaker was he was prepared to pay me. Really,
Yeah.
that's the long and short of it. He said, we're filming at my house, at my home down south. I'll pay for your travel and everything. Will you do it? And I was like, okay, that's quite full on. Is this guy serious, or is he a serial killer? You know? But I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and lo and behold, he wasn't a serial killer. I'm still alive. And I met with Peter Walsh, who is infamous for doing a Ninth Doctor Christopher Eccleston impression, because it was a
Yes. Yeah.
multi-Doctor story called Exhausted Supplies, which is still up on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, funnily enough, when you mentioned when you started mentioning this, I was like, these names sound familiar, and I was like, why do they sound familiar? And it's because Exhausted Supplies is
mm,
a brilliant, brilliant fan-made order. Like it was actually before I ever listened to Big Finish, because I'm
mm,
quite relatively new to Big Finish. My first ever Doctor Who audio that I listened to, I think it was Sam Davis, who's got a brilliant YouTube channel, and he's been on the podcast before. I think he recommended it as his favourite ever multi-Doctor story.
really? Oh, thanks,
Yeah,
Sam.
and yeah, it's definitely up there. I think it's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, go ahead, talk about how that happened, because like I said, this excited me. Sorry, I've just a little nerdy part of Doctor Who that I absolutely adore.
Well, Luke is he works in the industry. He's a Steadicam operator, so
Yeah,
he's a professional. But this was his first like audio project, and he'd co-written it with one of his best friends, and you know that it was sort of game recognizing game. Like I was starting to well, I'd done, my behind the camera stuff, and I was starting to get into, by that point, supporting artist work, extra work. So I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I feel like safe doing this with him. And the script was excellent. It was absolutely
Yeah.
excellent. And you see Multi-Doctor Story and think, oh, maybe it's going to be a bit, fanficky. I don't mean that in an overly derogatory way, but
Yeah.
there was something more to this one that wasn't just a pipe dream. It was about something. It had a point. And the guy, and Luke, bless him, he'd set up this home studio before it became cool in 2020.
Yeah.
It's converted his childhood bedroom into a tent, an indoor tent. He'd air conditioned it and everything, and he'd
Wow.
got this cast together. And it was just like, having done it for real, it was just like doing it for real. And like I said, I met Pete, who, one of the great aspects of it for me was, I know I can do like the funny voices, and other people like step back and they're in awe of it and whatever. It's like, well, it's just what I do. It's not really a surprise to me. But seeing someone else do that was really quite exciting, because
Mm.
Pete opens his mouth and Chris is coming out. It's almost indistinguishable. And, I've said this to
Yeah.
him before, that, now Chris is back. I hear like excerpts and that. I think, I'm hearing Pete. I'm not hearing Chris. I'm hearing Pete.
Yeah.
Um, and he's an odd fellow, and he doesn't he doesn't hide that at all, because he's worked as a stand-up comedian. So it's just his jam.
Yeah.
And a few years later, he invited me to join the group that he's with now, called We Sound Familiar. But also Luke came back a couple of years later with a poem called Ode to a Time Lord, which was
Yes.
which kind of became like a directory for Doctor Impressionists, because he got someone for each Doctor, and they're all brilliant. They're all brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute joy to have been able to be in that with all of them, because it's one of those things that become bigger than the sum of its parts, really, when you've got that many great people, as all those different characters. And the response to it was incredible. The response to both of Luke's projects was incredible, because he, bless him, he sent me a CD copy of Exhausted Supplies with various like testimonials inside from like the YouTube comments, which was
Yeah.
really sweet. And Ode to Time just took off, because it was like, we've got them all. We've got all the
Yeah.
Doctors in one place, which had never really been done before,
No.
to that sort of extent. And it was something that, again, it was another thing that had some depth. It was made with love, and it was from the heart, and it was something that a lot of people could connect with. And I've since learned that that's kind of what put me on the Big Finish radar, because Kenny, the editor of the Big Finish magazine Vortex, apparently texted Nick Briggs and said, "Have you heard this War Doctor? It's
Mm.
incredible. It sounds like the real deal." And Nick apparently texts back saying, "We know," which was really quite ominous in hindsight.
That is quite ominous.
Yeah,
Nick Briggs is everywhere. He's
yeah.
always listening.
He sees all. He's up there in his little Dalek mothership,
Yes.
monitoring all communication channels. And then the Big Finish intern retweeted it, and they said, "Oh, isn't it great?" And various people, I think it was, I can't remember who, but picked out the War Doctor, and I just sort of subtweeted underneath it, said, "Thank you very much, and I am available," which the account liked, and then I noticed shortly after unliked it. So, oh, okay, what's going
Yeah.
on here? Have I upset someone?
Yeah.
But it's you don't want to. You got to tread carefully with these things. You don't want to fuel any fires or give anyone any undue hope or whatever. But then it was quite a while after that conversation started. Nick emailed me out of the blue, which I thought was a joke at first, and we had a Zoom chat, and he was there. I'm giving the impression I'm really quite skeptical when people come to me with invitations.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had
Yeah.
a Skype chat, but we were both very much on the same wavelength of, um, you know, will it, won't it happen? Because it's a delicate thing to do. What they were, you know, it was very pie in the sky of, we're thinking about this,
Yeah.
we'll see if it's how far we can take it and how it feels. And yeah, they had me in for a recording of something else. I auditioned at the end of that day, and yeah, then I had the workshop with Louise Jameson, and we got the go ahead.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird, and it's a very weird journey. There's no real point where they said you've got the gig. It kind of just, you know, just baby steps, and it inched ever closer.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're going to go and do a box set, which I kind of thought, oh, we're going to do a pilot, but no, it was a proper box set. But then lockdown happened, which kind of put everything
Yeah.
back. But it's done
Well,
now. It's out there.
it is. And I must say, I just want to interject. Over the past week, I've listened to the first box set, which is absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
And
thank you so much.
yeah, and I really really like, because, like, as I said before, I'm relatively new to Big Finish, so it's I'm sort of now just getting used to the format
Yeah,
and listening to the audios, because I think
it's
it does
kind of
take a
like
little
learning another
while.
language, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Especially with
It's
Doctor Who audios, because the audio medium is, well, it's more passive than, say, television. With television, you've got to
mm,
sit down, you've got to watch something, you've got to engage. With audio, you know, usually you have the radio on in the background. But with
mm,
Doctor Who audio, because some of the plots are so intricate, you've got to
yeah,
focus. You've got
yeah,
to
you
actively
really do.
listen.
And yeah, I mean, the way that obviously the various writers have approached it, and obviously I don't want to give too much away. If you haven't listened to the box set and you don't want spoilers, skip ahead a few minutes. Don't leave. You know, still listen, because you know we've got lots more fun to have, but skip ahead a few minutes, because one thing that fascinated me about it is, spoilers incoming. The first episode is basically acts as a post regeneration story,
Yeah,
which is
which is the
really
first
really
one they've done.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first time Big Finish have done it, and obviously I think Big Finish at the moment are loving their firsts. I think they're really taking some big mad steps, and the fans are absolutely loving it. I
Oh
feel
yeah, we're
like
here for it.
Big Finish are on top of the world at the minute. They're everybody is, like I said. I was listening to older Big Finishes, and
Mm.
that they've sucked me into buying these new releases, with like Chris coming back and your audios and Dalek Universe. I'm so much hype around Big Finish at the minute, because they're trying some big different things, which is really exciting.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, a post regeneration story on audio, you think, I mean, it's very strange, because it's a doctor that we know. We don't know tons about this doctor like we do other doctors. It's a doctor that we already know. Then going right back to the beginning and doing a post regeneration story. But it's done brilliantly. It's really
Yeah.
done brilliantly. And I think your performance throughout the entire box set is fantastic.
Thank you.
And it really, really is. Honestly, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It blew me away, because I think there's this old cliche when it comes to impressionists and voice actors. You know, that there's a distinction between impression and performance,
Yeah.
and it's about
I mean,
finding the
I
balance.
kind of feel like there needs to be a new word for it, because
Mm,
impression and impersonation kind of has, I don't know, it kind of has like a load of baggage with it that kind of says
yeah,
it's recreative rather than creative or transformative.
yeah,
I don't know whether expression would be a better word, to
yeah,
express the character rather than to, you know, just sort of regurgitate something or parrot something
exactly.
back.
Yeah,
But it is a performance at the end of the day, and
it is.
you
Yeah.
know, with we've got to be honest. It's Sir John Hurt. It's a
Mm,
tough sell when you're going to say, "Oh, we're going to recast a role that he made his own."
mm.
And that's part of the reason why we had to, everyone tread very carefully, listening to their gut about how this is gonna go, because I don't know whether, if it had been the first War Doctor audios they'd done, whether it had been different or worse or better. I don't know. But because John had worked with Big Finish and he had that connection with them and connection with the production team,
Yeah.
um, there's even more to think about there. And they'd recast other parts very successfully. Like, for example, I think the first one they did was Ben Jackson, played by Elliot Chapman, which
Mm,
is, in the grand scheme of things, it's quite an obscure recast to start with,
yeah.
but almost sneaky as well, because it was a slightly more obscure choice. Mainly because, no disrespect to Michael Craze, most of his episodes were missing,
Yeah.
so not as many people were that connected to, or that attached to that character or that performance or those stories that he'd been in, unfortunately. But now, since we've had the animations, he's really getting the recognition he deserves, and he's been discovered by new audiences and reevaluated by new audiences. But since then, we've had new Third Doctor, got a new Brigadier,
Hmm.
and not just in Doctor Who. There's the other ranges, like they've done recasts for Blake Seven. They've brought whole series back with brand new casts, hugely successfully. So there's clearly an indication that people are on board with this. They love the characters enough, so long as it's done in the spirit with which the original was done,
Yeah.
they're
That,
here for it.
I think that's the key thing, is because obviously that it is something that people debate, because obviously you get it. It's becoming more common in film now as well, and I
Mm.
think it obviously it's a different medium, but uh, you had things like Peter Cushing being brought back in Star Wars, um, and there's that people have moral debates about it, because obviously it's someone who's deceased, and
Mm.
it's bringing them back for a performance. But I think the way that Big Finish do it, where it's getting people like yourself, or for example like John Culshaw, who and Tim Trelaw, bringing in people who have a genuine passion for the show and a
Hmm.
genuine passion for the characters, and doing a, making really wonderful stories in with the best intentions of just
Hmm.
celebrating
Yeah,
that part of Doctor
there's
Who.
there's nothing cynical about it.
No,
There's nothing
not at all.
cynical about it. When you look at Hollywood, sometimes it's done really, really well. Sometimes it's done really, really crassly, which is unfortunate. And we've got the technology, and there's that recent episode of the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian, where they
Mm,
brought where they talk about bringing a certain character back. I won't spoil
yeah,
that just in
yeah,
case. You weren't expecting those spoilers here.
yeah.
Um,
No.
but, but they actually discuss about, okay, we've got this technology, but we need to appreciate the responsibility that comes with how we use it. And when that announcement that they're doing it, they've recast the War Doctor. It could have gone south very, very fast if it had gone the wrong way. But you know they know what they're doing. They've been at this for over 20 years. They
Yeah.
know their audience, and the fact that they released that opening scene, that opening clip, I think
Mm,
set a lot of anxieties at
yeah.
rest. Some people are not going to be on board with it, whatever, which is absolutely
Mhm.
fine. They either want the real deal or nothing at all.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. We're not going to force you to listen to this. you know? But for those that do want more and want to celebrate these characters and go on these journeys, that option is there, because the alternative really is, unfortunately, letting those characters fall into obscurity. Do
Yeah.
we say once the actor has passed away, the character has died with them? Because admittedly, I was kind of worried that with the War Doctor, that was going to happen,
Yeah.
because I noticed he was appearing on less sort of marketing stuff as we get more new doctors, and especially given how we've got all of the doctors with, the whole timeless child stuff. Was he just going to
Yeah.
become another one of that number?
Yeah.
So I think the timing has just been there to sort of just keep it in people's mind, keep it relevant, keep it active, rather than just letting it slip away with which I think would have been a huge shame.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm glad that we're able to go back and explore all those possibilities, like you
Yeah.
say, be bold, tell that regeneration story. I know it's
Yeah.
weird that we're going through the War Doctor's timeline in reverse. Essentially, we saw the last
Yeah.
day of his life, we saw the lead up in the sets that John Hurt did, and now we've gone to the very beginning. So I've got to reverse engineer all of that,
Yeah.
unpack that, and give myself a journey to go on. And
Which in a way is it obviously the man who who created the War Doctor. It's very Moffat. It's very it's
yeah,
very
it's very
Moffat-esque
timey-wimey.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, very timey-wimey going backwards. But yeah, like I said, the set is wonderfully done. And yeah, again, like going back to that cliche that we mentioned before, where some people say like there's a fine balance between impression and a performance, and
Mhm.
some people like you often hear people say it's a great performance, and they maybe lose a little bit of the accuracy in the voice to
Mhm.
benefit the performance, which is usually a great thing. One thing that I want to say about you is that you have all of the performance and all of the voice, because you don't like there is no moment where I obviously I think it's a wonderful performance from you, and I don't want to I don't want to take it away from you, but when I hear it, I I forget that I'm listening to Jonathon Carley, and I feel like I'm listening to John Hurt, which in a way sounds like a bad thing, because it's your performance at the end of it.
Well,
You
I've got
perform,
I've got
but
one thing to say to that, and that is just good. That's the
yeah,
point. It's not about me.
exactly.
And really, if you want to, split hairs even further, you shouldn't really be hearing me or John Hurt. It should just be the character.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's not about my ego or anyone's ego. It's the character first and foremost. It's
Mm.
the story that's going on. It's If you can immerse yourself in that, then I've done my job.
Yeah.
And I'm gratified that that it has been received so well, that people like yourself have been so positive about it, received it as it was intended. And in a year when we've had so much David Tennant's done all the things. We got
Mm.
Christopher Eccleston back. We
Yeah.
thought hell would freeze over before that would happen, and yet people are saying that the set I've done is the favorite one that they've heard this year. That is mind blowing to me, and I am so grateful to people that have been generous enough with their praise and generous enough to buy it and support it. um and there's no higher compliment really to say that I didn't realize it was you, because
Yeah.
that's what we set out to do.
That's great. It's great to hear, and I'm so glad that it's doing well, because it really deserves it. Um, and like I said, I don't want to spoil too much here, because I want people to go and listen to the set themselves and experience it. Um, because all three stories are brilliant, and
They were
obviously
excellent scripts,
they're fantastic scripts and
which
wonderfully
does so
directed
much of the
as
work for
well.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Everyone brought their A game,
Yeah.
which I'm hugely proud of, being able to work with these people.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember those scripts coming through and thinking, this is when you read something and you gasp or you tear up or you have that unexpected emotional reaction, you're reading good stuff and you
Yeah.
can't really go wrong with it. And then you've got Louise Jameson guiding you on that path as well. It would have been a
Yeah.
miracle if it had all gone wrong. Not that it ever
Yeah.
would, because like I said, they all know what they're doing, and
Hmm.
you can't help but feel like you're in safe hands, which is so important when you're
Yeah.
trusted with something. You feel compelled to repay that and deliver on that. So it's you know it's the best atmosphere and relationship to work with. because everyone is just there for the love of it. Every aspect of it, be it Doctor Who, be it the medium, be it just telling good stories. So much passion from so many different places, and I'm just glad that all of you guys are on board for it.
Definitely, we definitely are, and from what I gather, there's plenty more coming, which is which is wonderful.
That was another surprise to me, because it was the second day of recording, the first one, where we had the sort of set up chat in the morning where they were checking everyone, and David Richardson piped up and said, "Oh, we've got the second set of scripts for you when you're ready." And I was like, "What? I thought we're doing just this one." It's like, "No, we've got the next one. Like, the second one was written before the first. We're good to go." It's like, "David,
wow.
How many are we doing?" We're doing 4. Like,
Four. Yeah, that's
my.
what I was going to say, because I knew there was 2 coming out, and I had a little look on the Big Finish website, and then I saw there was 2 more coming out after that, and I was so excited.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, job security.
Yeah, exactly.
In this business, that's unheard of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, so I'm all right in saying that the second set is coming out November. Am I right in saying that?
December, I think it is.
December.
But I think some of the dates have shifted around.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. But I believe it's December, so it should be out just before Christmas. So put that down on your Christmas list, folks.
Yeah.
And I think it's June, December 2022 as well. So
that's very exciting.
I'll be coming every 6 months.
Yes.
Nice and regular.
Yeah. Lovely. And obviously the first box set is available to buy now.
It's available. You've missed the pre-order price, so
Yes. But
so either
Forged in Fire.
Treat yourself or wait for a sale.
Please do. Like I said, this is not sponsored by Big Finish, though. Hit me up if you want. But this is not sponsored by Big Finish, but I would urge you to go and listen to this, because it's wonderful, and Jonathan is wonderful in them.
Or get the bundle. The bundle's still all at pre-order price.
Get the bundle, yeah. So we're gonna take a very, very short break, and when we come back, we've got some features to run through. The first being the wonderful shelf, which is, for the first time I get to say this, I have a shelf. I have a real shelf now. I have a bookcase.
I'm looking at the real shelf.
That there is my DVD collection. But let's get on to the DVD collection. So, welcome back to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm still Josh Carr, and I'm still with Jonathon Carley, of course. And it's time to take a slide over to the shelf to see what Jonathan would like to put in the DVD collection.
By the power of Grayskull.
The Unicorn and the Wasp, or Love and Monsters?
Which one do you think I'll prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
Right. So I've listened to your I've listened to the show because you got a great vibe going on, and funny enough, way back in the beginning, the first episode, I was amazed how often my name came up. I was like, it was kind of uncanny. So I'm familiar with the format, but equally, I'm familiar with what else is on the shelf. And each time I've listened, I've had bated breath, hoping that no one else would take my pick.
Okay.
So
this has been brewing for a while, which I
yes.
quite. This is probably the first time this has happened, that someone has eagerly had, because a lot of the time when I bring this up to people, they really struggle with either this or the corridor. So I'm very excited to hear what you're about to say, because I don't know. As usual, I have no idea what you're going to pick.
So yeah, you sent me the list in the prep, and of course I don't know how many episodes you've recorded since. So I thought there might be some mystery in it. I was praying that no one else had picked it, but it's not on there. It is Death to the Daleks.
Oh, nice. Very nice. So we have another Dalek story because I'm just getting a list up in front of me. We do have quite a few Dalek stories now, which I love. We had a few in a row. We had Planet of the Daleks and Remembrance of the Daleks, but it's Death to the
Planet's an
Daleks.
interesting choice. Who chose Planet? Remind
Who
me.
was it who chose Planet? I haven't got the list in front of me. Who was it? I'm dreadful. Ellie, TARDIS monkey.
Ellie.
Yes.
Excellent taste.
Yes. So yeah, Death to the Daleks. Very interesting pick. Not a. I don't want to offend any Death to the Daleks fans out there. Obviously, I will reserve my judgment. I won't tell you my thoughts yet, but not a particularly highly regarded story. But
No.
one that I've
Generally
seen that's had a little bit of a renaissance recently, from what I gather on Twitter, which is obviously a minefield of opinions, but I've seen a few people mention it as a little underrated classic. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? You go. You stake your claim for Death to the Daleks.
It is just that. It is kind of that underappreciated classic, and I wait with bated breath for the Blu-ray to come out for it to get that reevaluation. But it's one of those stories that, like you say, it's never in that top tier. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not on par with like Genesis or Androzani or whatever. But that's why I like it. It is a bit of an underdog. It's there's a huge amount of bias because it was my first proper story. I deliberately omitted that before because the weird journey. So the one that came after Mr. Bean as Doctor Who was Death to the Daleks. So it's like, okay, we're into the real deal now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what kicked all this off, for real, like in all seriousness. Because I don't think any other story has done as much heavy lifting with getting new young people invested in Doctor Who during the wilderness years as Death to the Daleks, be it on UK Gold or be it on video, which is how I got it, because it just sneaks in there. It sneaks in there, and everyone's seen it, but never fully appreciates it. And I think part of that effortlessness, because it's not trying too hard, it's not trying to be something it's not. I think it's just part of its charm.
Yeah.
Because I mean, break it down, and you realize that it does actually have a lot going for it. Because you've got Pertwee at the height of his game.
Yeah.
You've got Liz Sladen, who has completely found her feet as Sarah, and you've got I've got written down here. It's almost like the movie poster. You've got Pertwee, Sladen, Belal.
Belal, obviously someone that we have to talk about in quite big detail is Belal.
He is one of the finest supporting characters in all of Who history. He's one of the companions that we never had. Played brilliantly by Arnold Yarrow, who for some reason sounds unintentionally like George from Rainbow, the big pink hippo.
Yes.
But again, I think that's part of that gentleness, why I think he's so adorable. Because you've got this poor diminutive actor shoved in this latex bodysuit that glows in the dark, and he's got to perform.
He's quite terrifying as well, out of context. But yeah. Belal himself is a saint, an adorable saint, and I will not have a bad word said about Belal. But out of context, just the visuals, horrifying, very horrifying.
Which is an important lesson. Very important lesson of principle. Do not judge by appearances.
Exactly.
Because Belal's got a heart, I don't know his biology, of gold. And No, he's recently made a reappearance on Big Finish in the Dalek Protocol, reprised by
Yes.
Nick Briggs, because it's one of his favorite stories as well. If we didn't have Death to the Daleks, we might not have, the man, the myth, the legend of Nick Briggs
Yeah.
and everything that is derived from this. But one of the big things about the Wilderness Years is the accessibility of Who. Like I said, you had either UK Gold, where you have to have Sky, or you've got Real Player, which is useless. But when the videos came out, they were kind of had a limited run and they were done. So if you didn't buy them upon release, you might never see it again. Whereas now, we don't know how good we've got it. They're all available to stream. The Blu-ray sets are coming out. You can go into HMV and buy any story, Death to the Daleks or otherwise. But in this, in the Wilderness Years, where they were limited, there was sort of a sort of hierarchy in pricing of based on the rarity of what these videos would cost. Like if you wanted Genesis, you're talking big money. You're talking the big bucks. And would you pay that sight unseen for a story that, I mean, Genesis isn't the best example, for a story that you don't necessarily know is going to be your favorite, because it's not pocket money. You're talking £20 plus.
Yeah.
But Death to the Daleks, representing in that tier where you could get it for about a tenner, and anywhere would have it. Which is kind of like, a middle finger up to the man. It's like, you can't deprive me of the Daleks. Everyone has a right to the Daleks.
It's something I've never thought of before. Is that it's a cult classic because it was cheap, which is great.
But
That's
you're able
brilliant.
to grow an audience from that by making it accessible. People can discover it. If you're gatekeeping by putting, the good stories behind a paywall, like Genesis or Towns of Wayne Chang or Caves of Androzani, then if most people can only afford the less appreciated ones, it's more of a challenge, which many are prepared to meet. But there is, in its humble, plastic case on its little black brick of magnetic tape goodness, there is 4 episodes of perfect comfort watching Doctor Who. That is just, I am what I am. I'm not a classic. I don't care. But this is the story, and just enjoy the ride.
Yes.
And that's not to steer at it, because it does have a lot of great stuff. Some people say that like Terry Nation's latest stories are like his greatest hits. And if Death to the Daleks is his greatest hits, that doesn't necessarily mean those hits are any less great. Like if say you release the best of the Beatles, that doesn't mean all the songs on those albums are suddenly less good, not as good, because they've been recognized. But it's a very on-brand script for Terry Nation, because if you're not going to hire Terry Nation to not write a Terry Nation script, are you?
No.
That's what he's there for. So it has at least the decency to be four episodes long. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It just does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, I by no means I don't hate it. It's like I said, because I'm quite new to Classic Who. Some of these kinds of stories, they sort of fall out of the radar for me because I've only really seen most of Classic Who once. So I need those rewatches. I feel like when I do, I'm planning on doing a second rewatch all the way through. And I'm hoping that's when the little oddities and the little gems will shine out a little bit more. Because the first time you watch it, you sort of just get overawed and a bit excited for the classics. Like you're waiting. Like sometimes you'll get to part 4 of an episode and you'll know, I've got Caves of Androzani next, and I just want to get there.
You're wishing away Planet of Fire. Just
exactly.
Just bring on Caves. Just bring on Androzani.
It's something that I couldn't help but do, especially when you get that deep into Classic Who, because it's fair to say you've sat through some stuff by that point.
Yeah,
but
you've sat through it and you've done it in a way that it's not meant to be consumed.
Yeah.
because these are episodes that go out once, one a week, for like 6 months of the year. If you're digesting 50 years worth of material from start to finish,
Yeah.
unbroken, that's not how it was meant to be done. So
Exactly.
it's a very
Yeah.
different experience.
Definitely. But I really, you've really sold Death to the Daleks to me as one that
Good.
I now immediately want to
Vindication.
rewatch. Yes, because I again, it would be absolutely remiss of me to not mention possibly because I actually mentioned, I believe, last week. I think this was on in the recording because me and Richard, and because he was at my house, we ended up just talking for hours. I think we were going back and forth for about 5 hours, and I can't remember what is actually going into the podcast. But I mentioned some audacious cliffhangers, some cliffhangers that are like,
mate.
we know you're coming back next week. The one that I mentioned, we know you're coming back next week, whatever. So we're just going to have a bit of fun. The one I mentioned was Planet of Giants, where you have one is a cat and one is a sink, which is brilliant. And here you have a red and white floor, and you still go back. It's brilliant. It's
Unashamedly,
brilliant.
it is the best cliffhanger because you have no idea where it's going to go. No idea. And the brass neck to just end on that, it's like, respect.
Yeah. It's almost, so, again, I mean this with such respect. It's almost such a bad cliffhanger. It becomes brilliant because there is no way that you can understand it and know what's going to happen. No one has ever been left knowing less from a cliffhanger than they have.
Well, exactly, because as soon as it reprises the next week, you've got Belal who goes, well, what is it?
Exactly.
And then
he feels the same as us.
Okay, bear with me. This is what it is. But just the sheer brass neck to have done that. So I'm giving you nothing. I'm giving you the floor. That's it. I'll leave that to your imagination. And
I wish it was something. I wish it was something that New Who did more, because, like I said, around like 2008, they could have put anything as a cliffhanger, and then people would have come back. Definitely, like no one's tuning out because your cliffhanger is just a man's kneecap or something. You just make something weird a cliffhanger and just see what happens.
Just random tiled floor, just throw it in.
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And
unironically, the best cliffhanger.
It's fantastic.
I mean, it shouldn't work.
I genuinely just had a brilliant idea, because I'm redecorating this room at the moment. I've just moved into a new house, and my floor needs painting. My floorboards need paint.
Or if you're not prepared to commit to the paint, get a rug.
Oh yes, there must be a rug.
Redbubble, get on that.
Redbubble, right?
Contact Clayton Hickman. Stat.
If you're listening to this, tweet me if you find a rug, a Death to the
Tweet me
Daleks
as well.
rug. Yes, tweet us both, please. And I'll share it around, and I'm sure it will become the interior design trend of 2021. What a pick. That's a great pick. I love these picks. They're really weird ones. No offense, but like the ones.
Did you expect anything less?
Yeah, because like I think Planet of the Daleks is probably the last one we've had. I mean, we've had 3 absolute classics in a row, like Remembrance, Fenric, and Web of Fear.
Yeah.
But I like it when these ones sneak on. I love it. I really love it. That's a great pick. Great pick. I just want to give you your props there. Death to the Daleks.
Get it. No
it's
one
not
has ever had a
physically
bad
on my
time.
shelf. I will get it on my shelf, but it's on the shelf.
No one has ever had a bad time watching Death to the Daleks, so
Never.
you owe it to yourself.
Never.
No one has ever said, you know what, I had a really rotten day today. Why? What happened? I watched Death to the Daleks. Never happened. Never happened.
Oh God, that is hilarious. That is utterly hilarious. So I mean, leading on, because we have some lovely questions, but we have some quite funny questions as well from my strange listeners. So let's. I mean, I hate the fact that I'm going to be this person. How's your David Tennant? How's your Scottish David Tennant?
Are you asking me to say bloody Twitter?
Love it. Yes. We have a live rendition of bloody Twitter. That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
That was a Doctor impression, but probably not the one you're expecting.
Oh, it's great. Oh, wonderful. Like I said, I don't want to be like, do the
Dance
thing.
monkey.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed that. So, questions. We have questions from our wonderful listeners. And I'm going to speed run a few. There's a few that we'll spend a bit more time on because I want to get through as many as possible because we had so many. I only announced that you were coming on the podcast yesterday as we're recording this, and we got bombarded. I got bombarded with questions because people were so excited. So first one is from a friend of mine, Joshua Carpenter, at JoshuaCC252.
Hello, Joshua.
He has asked, what has been your favourite line to say as the War Doctor, spoilers permitting?
Ooh, well, that's a tough question because I've recorded one that's out there. I've recorded one that's not out there. And I've got the scripts for 3. So I've got to narrow it down to basically one that you'll understand. But it's just as well because that first box set is beautiful, beautiful writing. And I've got 2 picks. Like, it's not a line, it's more of a speech. It's from the first episode, Light the Flame. And it's the funeral scene towards the beginning. Because that is, it's slightly, is it indulgent? I don't know. It's slightly indulgent, but to have that moment of quite in-depth, intimate reflection and seeing the Doctor, or the Time Lord formerly known as the Doctor, in such a vulnerable state, reflecting on what's led him here, was such, when I read it, I was weeping. Because it was that, it just got me. It just really got me because he's beating himself up because he thinks he's failed in multiple ways. He's failed at being the Doctor. And I was like, wow. And then comes along the pressure of like, I've got to sell this. I've got to, perform this. And, did it, performed it and everything. And then obviously it was one that's like, I kind of really want to hear that back in context just to check that I haven't blown it. But when I did finally hear it back, I was like, yeah, that's hit the spot. I did what I set out to do there.
Yeah.
It's not, overindulgent. It's not showing off or anything. It is just pitched in just the right spot and hits that emotional beat. And then it's just all shrugged off and we get on with the story.
Yeah.
Which is just a privilege to have that moment. Because like I don't know if you were editing something, it would kind of be the kind of thing that would be the first thing to get cut because it doesn't advance plot.
Yeah.
It's, it's just this scene of this guy having a go at himself. But yeah, just a beautiful speech. So much so that I hope to put it in my show reel. Because it's just lovely, unbroken monologue. My second choice, slightly less heavy, is from the Shadow Squad, the 3rd episode. And it's again another opening scene where the robot that's the autopilot that's flying this ship where the War Doctor's hiding finds him, and he basically just takes the mick, and he goes, "You
Yes.
shouldn't be here." I said, "I know." So that's why I'm hiding. And just that's when I kind of felt like I was having fun with the part, which kind of
Yeah.
felt a bit naughty because War Doctor is, you kind of feel like you should be miserable and angsty the whole time. But just to basically take the mick in this really
Yeah.
serious situation is deeply doctorish. It's just like, I know I shouldn't be here, but sod you,
Yeah.
basically.
Well,
I'm in
it's
charge.
something I actually wanted to mention that I forgot to earlier on, is that there is a wonderful balance, because it's such a tough part to play. Well, I imagine, because you have to simultaneously be the Doctor, that's a recognizable character, and follow on from the eight Doctors that come before it in a way that makes sense. But you also have to not be you have to distinguish from those Doctors by being it's a darker incarnation. It's an incarnation that doesn't call himself the Doctor. It must be a tough balancing act, but I think yourself and the scripts get it spot on, because there are moments where you get to hear you having a little bit of fun, like that moment there, in a doctory way, but it doesn't take away from those darker moments at all. And I think it's really, really well balanced in that sense.
Well, and it raises questions as well about how much of the Doctor is a front. Like in that moment, is he because the Doctor uses tactics to get through things, usually by talking his way out of problems. He's just deploying those tactics in a different situation. And a few people pointed out that it's quite Seventh Doctorish. Finding the Doctor like holed up in a cupboard on a spaceship where he shouldn't be, and just be like, "Hello," is just very sort of McCoy. But it's just that tactic deployed in a different way. So all those things are still there. So what you use them for that has changed. It's the context first and foremost, but it's still true to the character.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And thank you, Joshua, for asking that question. Next question from dear friend of the show, the Who Knew hype man, Cal at generic _ tweeting. Please give him a follow. He said the legacy you've undertaken is huge, as you probably already know. But what thing did you first decide was the most important to get right upon accepting the role?
That is a big question, because
It's a loaded question,
big deal.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, when you're going into anything, it's got to be true. Like I just said, it's got to have the truth to it. It's got to be true to the character and also true to yourself, because you're doing it. So you've got to make those decisions and navigate these situations. You've got the script, but you can't take the script for granted to get you out of things. You've got to earn things and justify them. Like I say, use those tactics. Like the words are your ammunition, but it's like where you point them, where you aim them, and what position you take. That's the important thing. So being true to that, and in terms of the research, like the Doctor I've been familiar with for most of my life.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So it's like, it's the part I was born to play, baby. But without meaning to sound like too obnoxious, the actual War Doctor himself is, you've got to be bold. You've got to seize it. You've got to be empowered to take it and run with it. And it's there's a lot of not baggage, but a lot of responsibility, and a lot of there's a lot that's loaded with, because it's because like I say, it is Sir John and it is Doctor Who, two great big things in culture mashed together. So really the only other thing is confidence, really, to, like I said, just take it and run with it. And a big part of that has been the work that, Louise and Big Finish put into sort of priming me for this. Because I think back to my audition, and I kind of wince a bit at like how I went into it, because the thing is, when you do auditions, there's a huge temptation that is very hard to resist, to throw everything at it and the kitchen sink, whether it's appropriate or not, to sort of say, look at all the things I can do. But really, restraint counts for a lot more, and just being true to what the situation is at the time, and being true to that, rather than going through the whole gamut of emotions in 1 or 2 pages. So confidence, restraint, truth, and the other one is, of course, just respect. That this isn't me showboating. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm the Doctor. This is, like I said, it's about the character. If anything, it's about everyone else in these stories that this is about, that you'll find, that you'll see clearly or hear clearly in the one that's out, and then the stories to come. Because you could say all these stories work from the supporting character's point of view as well. They all exist 3-dimensionally, and you've got to give them that. You've got, like I say, it's game meeting game, and everyone's got to be generous with each other to make this work, to make it immersive, and to carry the story through. So and then the other thing is really crafting that journey, and that deconstructing, like I said, going backwards from Day of the Doctor, the audio stories, right back to basics of like, right, how do we get there? And that's part of that is dictated by the script, but another part of that is just what I'm bringing to it, if that kind of makes sense.
Well, there you go, Cal. I mean, like I said, it's so fun hearing you talk about this, because like I said, you don't often. It's quite a strange situation, isn't it, that you're playing this character that was made famous by John Hurt.
I've got to set the stage for him, essentially. Because if I was following on from like playing the older War Doctor, that would it wouldn't sit right. Because I mean, from a cultural perspective, but also from a performance perspective, because I'd be reaching, I'd be chasing, a man who is like 3 times my age, which you can't sustain that. But also that's an incredibly tough act to follow, and to sandwich in that, it just wouldn't fit right. So to go right back to basics and have that regeneration story, to find the character through the story myself and bring my own energy, that was, it just meets nicely in the middle, that it just works on all the other levels.
It is a lovely way of doing it, and it's quite, I mean, isn't it just a little thought that I've had, like how these tiny little decisions in the show like affect things later on. Like, for example, in Night of the Doctor, they could very easily have just shown older John Hurt.
Yeah, then I'd be screwed.
And then there's no young War Doctor. And we wouldn't have these wonderful stories.
If the War Doctor had lived for just 1 day, they could have done it. I thought about that earlier today. If they'd just shown in that reflection that it was John Hurt as we saw him in Day of the Doctor, and that day is just the 1 day that the War Doctor exists, and everything goes to pot, it would still work dramatically. Because it's
we've seen Doctors go years, hundreds of years without changing appearance. It's not unrealistic to think that he regenerates into an older gentleman and dies an older gentleman. It's almost like, I mean, you could cynically say that it's just luck, but in my head, I like to think, because I know that we know that Stephen's a fan, that he's thinking in the back of my mind, I think, did he think I could leave as much room as possible here for future stories to be told?
I think he said,
really?
Like, for example, in Time with the Doctor, he's left those big gaps, when the 11th Doctor's traveling on his own, or all that time on Translator. It's like, Big Finish will fill that. I'll give them an opening.
Yeah,
So I
there's a
think
bit.
there's some intent in there.
Yeah, because
And of course,
it's a recurring theme throughout his. There are a lot of big gaps. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I don't think I must. I've not done my research here, but in surely there's not an era where the Doctor ages more than within, in between the 11th hour and Twice Upon a Time. There's thousands, well, technically billions of years worth of stories to be
yeah,
told in there.
yeah.
So,
I mean, because we
it's
know
interesting,
nothing
isn't it?
about this Time War, that's something else that could have gone for
Yeah,
billions of years, and it just didn't count. So, I
yeah,
wasn't the Doctor for that time, so they don't count. I'm still 900 and whatever.
yeah, yeah. So
And let's face
interesting.
it, we've had box sets from much slimmer gaps
we
come out
have,
recently.
we
I suppose
have.
someone's got a graph of like, can we squeeze something in there? We've got stories inside stories now. That's
Mm,
the crazy thing, but they're
yeah.
still equally valid, and people want to hear them. So why not?
Yeah, well, it's like I just watched a review that Mr. TARDIS did, obviously with Will Carlisle, about a new Big Finish release, which stars Zack from the Satan Pit and the Impossible Planet from 2006. It's like this one-off character who was in an hour and a half's worth of stories, who was a supporting role. Not even obviously, no offense to him, but not even really the standout amongst all of those that amazing
When you're in a
supporting
story with
cast.
the actual devil, then
Yeah,
there's a bit of competition for
exactly.
prominence.
And he's now, 15 years later, he's got his own Big Finish releases. It's great. I love the way that Big
I do
Finish.
wonder what the actors think when these phone calls come, and it's like, what? That thing I did 15 years ago.
Yeah,
You want me to come into a studio for a day and they're going to give me a bunch of money to read? I mean,
it's
sure.
it's mad, isn't it? It really is mad. Next question. Another great question from Ben at Real Enthusiast. He said, "Hi,
Hello,
Jonathan."
Ben.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hello, hello, hello. You're currently best known for voicing the younger version of a beloved character. So my question is this: what fictional character or characters would you love to voice an older version of? It doesn't have to be restricted to Doctor Who, of course. And he's also said, love your work. So.
Well, thank you very much. Older versions of characters.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a tough question, that. I was thinking about it
yeah.
myself. I was like, that's a really hard question.
I mean, I hate to be pedantic, but older characters, they're just simply not going to be in my casting bracket. So
Yeah.
I'd never even
Well, it
be.
depends on the character you pick.
Well, yeah,
Because you could pick a
it's
child. You could pick a child.
But if we're looking at way into the future, if Big Finish or anyone is still going, I mean, it's very dangerous to set your heart on roles because, I mean, let's be honest, you have no control over what you get. Like the vast majority of people that want to play James Bond, unfortunately, they're going to be disappointed because
Yeah.
there can only be one at any particular time. But I'm a fan of Blake Seven. Like through the winter lockdown, I got the box set and watched the whole thing with my dad because like he was part of getting me into Doctor Who. So kind of repaid that by like, okay, here's like Doctor Who, more or less the same team, but not quite. And he really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But in Blake Seven, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is one of the finest characters and anti-heroes in all of science fiction, which is Carr Avon. And I would absolutely love to have a chance to play either a younger or an older version of Avon, which I've kind of already done for a chap called Oliver Dallas, who's released a charity anthology of short stories, and he asked me to read one of them, which I did as Avon as a child. So that's the only thing I've actually done, but I don't think it would ever happen because it's so much. The actor who played him, Paul Darrow, passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
So I'm not particularly au fait with Blake Seven. It's something that I really want to get into in the future. But Paul Darrow,
of Time Lash fame.
wonderful. People who listen to the pod know that I am the number one Time Lash apologist. I absolutely adore Time Lash.
His
So yeah,
memorable performance as Malin Tekker is
yes.
unforgettable. But I suspect that there'd be a long line of people if they ever decide to recast it. I don't
Mhm.
at the moment it's not really even thinkable. I think there'd be a
Yeah.
long line of people that they would consider and probably be more qualified. If
Mm.
anything, I'd be more, the type of character I would play. I'd be more likely to be considered for Villa if they ever did that. But Michael Keating, who plays Villa, still at the moment is still with us. So I wouldn't want to earmark anything at this stage. But
Definitely not. No.
second choice, which I suppose could count as an older version of a character, would be I am usually referred to as a master.
Oh,
If I
beautiful.
could bring back Delgado, that would be. It's too much to ask to play a doctor and a master.
That is a wonderful Delgado. I mean, obviously, you don't need me to tell you that you're you're fantastic at voices, but that is a great Delgado.
They've not done it yet, and they've teased it in the third Doctor stories, and I'm like, could they do it? Will they do it? Or if
Mhm.
they've already done it but not released it yet, I'd be a little bit gutted, but I'm sure whoever they would get to do it would be amazing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did a thing for Miles Taylor in lockdown last year. Who remembered I can't remember where he must have heard it from, but just asked me to do it. I was like, yes. No one else has ever asked me to do Delgado, but
Yeah,
I'll do it. And yeah, people loved it. So there's something
wonderful.
to that maybe. So you never know. One day I've got to slip it into conversation over lunch.
Yeah,
One day perhaps, and
lovely.
we'll see.
Well, in what is possibly the smoothest segue of all time, speaking of Miles Taylor, he has also
Hello,
asked a
Miles.
question. He said, "Hey, Jonathan," and Josh, of course, which I really liked because you know what, I'm not one to pick fights with my listeners, but you lot never say hi to me. You're always saying hi to my guests.
Yeah,
I'm here
people are always
too.
asking who is Josh, not how is
Yeah,
Josh.
exactly. So thank you, Miles. Hello, Miles. I rejoice at you saying hello to me. He has asked, what impression, be it who related or otherwise, do you enjoy doing the most? Not necessarily your best, just the one that you absolutely love saying little phrases with.
Well, the one I enjoy doing the best is the War Doctor because I get paid for it.
Nope.
But
Naturally.
but other things. Well, for those who don't know, I'm with a group called We Sound Familiar, and we do our own like Impressionist podcast with Peter Walsh, Chris Walker-Thompson, and Elliot Crossley, who all do different doctors and other stuff. And we have a WhatsApp group, and every now and again, we end up sending. If something triggers us, we end up sending voice notes in all sorts of bizarre voices. But a popular one is it's not even Chris and Pete do incredible Alan Partridges. I can only stand back and marvel. But just to get into that sort of that range and just say, because there's a lot going on in the world, it's kind of beyond parody. And to just chime in, just sort of in Partridge, it's like, I was on Twitter today and I saw this.
Yes.
To just go down that rabbit hole completely ironically it's always a laugh.
Funnily enough, when I read this question, I was like, what would mine be?
Yeah, go on, Josh.
And
in the spirit of asking
I
you,
would also say a little bit of Partridge.
a little bit of Partridge.
Yes.
A little bit of Partridge on my podcast.
Yeah, yes. Jurassic Park. Yeah, I mean, living in Norwich, it always gets a laugh. And in fact, in my most Norwich-related story ever, I actually met Steve Coogan in character
No
as
way.
Partridge
No way.
in the what I believe is only in Norfolk, the department store Gerald's So it probably the most Norwich I've ever been as
The most
someone who's
Norwich
not a
and
native.
the most Partridge.
Yes.
How many people do you think tried to do a Partridge impression to him that day?
So
And
many.
how
I
fed
didn't
up
even attempt.
would he have been? It's like,
Yeah.
it's okay, but it's not great.
He well, obviously everyone knows that it was a book signing for one of his Alan Partridge books, and he signed it. He was like, what are your names? And I was like, I'm Jess and this is Josh. And he went, Jess and Josh, what a mouthful, eh? And it the most
Don't take that out of
beautiful
context.
Partridge. Yeah, in the most Partridge way. And it made my day. It was great. Well,
But
I bet you
there is
didn't
a second
expect this
choice
podcast to
slip
go
in.
Partridge. Oh, go ahead with the second choice.
After, because we're recording this on, what date is it? Monday the 6th. And John Bishop was on BBC Breakfast today with trying to slide in a little bit of promotion with nothing to say. And he let slip that hey, my name is Dan and I'm playing a plasterer. I am a plasterer, so I'm going to be plastering everything. So I'm looking forward to when Dan's finally out there to just completely take the mick, and you go in the TARDIS, go, this place is massive, absolutely massive.
Oh, that is a great John Bishop. Oh, why am I surprised? But
it's a police box, dickhead.
Oh, God.
And then there's definitely, in times to come, there's going to be a lot of humour to be mined with.
Oh,
with Dan the
definitely.
plasterer. There are no walls. It's full of holes.
Definitely.
Cracking time. I'm on it.
Next question from Harry McHugh. Harry McHugh01 on Twitter. Harry
Hello,
asked.
Harry.
Hello, Harry.
Hello, Harry. I do hope you're not an imbecile.
I can't get through these questions. This is so fun. Harry's asked, what brand and flavour of crisp are your favourites? But also, what are the War Doctor's favourite crisps?
Okay, all right.
We only ask the hard-hitting questions here, so please
These are important.
take your
This
time.
is a hot topic.
Yes.
Who knew everything about Doctor Who and crisps? Right, my favourite crisps is going to be between salt and vinegar Pringles or
Wonderful.
chili heatwave Doritos. If it's salt and vinegar, it has to be the kind that burns the skin off your mouth.
I was about to say, that's some hard man crisps. Because
you go hard or you go.
You're either burning your mouth.
Don't turn my lips blue. I don't want to know. I cannot stand opening a bag of salt and vinegar crisps and it's just like, it's like you've shown it some salt and vinegar.
Walkers aren't enough, are they? Walkers aren't enough.
Tame. It's tame, mate. It's tame. So yeah, between those two, and actually, I don't know whether I can say salt and vinegar Pringles because technically they're classed as a biscuit because they're made of dough rather than
really.
Sliced potato. Yeah.
Well, I never knew that.
We thought the debate was all about the Jaffa cakes, but the Pringles.
The Pringles. So a Pringle is technically a biscuit.
It is. So if we're going technically with crisps, it's got to be chili heatwave Doritos.
I also have to interject because I have this horrific compulsion that whenever anyone mentions Pringles, I have to mention my most inane, boring fact that I know, which is...
You mean I didn't cover it with the
no, you didn't. You didn't, because do you know what the shape of a Pringle is called?
I don't. Go on.
It is a hyperbolic paraloid, and you will now remember that forever, I hope. No one ever does.
I've forgotten it already.
Hyperbolic paraloid.
Hyperbolic paraloid. That is some techno babble stuff. That is. They don't teach you that in maths class.
I'm
important stuff.
I'm currently writing my own Doctor Who fan series, as people know, and I am determined to get it in there, possibly as a part of the TARDIS, just so that in my head there is just a Pringles sound, a TARDIS console that, and I can say, Billy, flick the hyperbolic paraloid.
You got the quavers over here, they're all over the place, but Pringles, they got structure. They're hyperbolic paraloids. They know what they're about. They're consistent. They commit.
We really started this podcast with such a deep, wonderful chat about your work, and
Now I'm
it's
broken.
all of a sudden descended to John Bishop describing Pringles, which I love. So the next part of the question: what are the War Doctor's favourite crisps?
War Doctor's favourite crisps. It's got to be either flame grilled steak McCoys, some proper strong flavour there.
I knew McCoys were going to come out for this, and they have to. It's so true.
They've got to.
Yeah.
They got the flavour, they got the strength, they've got the edge, they've got the ridge.
Yes.
Or smoky bacon frazzles.
Definitely. Two sets of crisps there that are made for war. Definitely.
Put that on the bag of frazzles. Frazzles,
yes.
made for war.
Yeah, that is wonderful. So I have another question here. We'll make this the last question. I apologize for everybody who hasn't had their question read out. Hopefully, try again for the next guest.
Anyone that's missed, I'll reply on Twitter for you all.
So kind of you. So kind. The last question is from Luke at Barbara Yataxa. Great name.
Oh,
hey, Jonathan.
Name.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? He said, hey, Jonathan, how much research did you do for the part? Did you listen to Hurt's audio series, or did you go in fresh and want to put your own stamp on the performance? And a few people asked as well, like, how much of John Hurt's other roles did you explore? Like, did you go back to listen more to how he was at the age that you're aiming for, sort of?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I mean, obviously, Day of the Doctor is like, before I go into recording, it's like the nightly ritual. That's what I watch before going into to just absorb that. But again, you've got to remember that is the last day of his life. That's when he's basically defeated. He's exhausted. So like I said, all of it is backtracking from then. So the other audios are great because it's at his peak, arguably full flow. But also to get a feel for how Sir John sounds on audio, because it's a different technique when you're performing either on stage or on camera. People are all over the place. You can be talking to someone who's right in your face or someone who's on the opposite side of the room. You've got to, you adjust yourself accordingly. Whereas when you're on audio, unless you're specifically shouting, you're using mic techniques, and the mic is essentially someone's ear. So pretty much all the time you're behaving as if you're stood right next to a person, basically. Yeah. And that does affect like the timbre of your voice. And throughout the War Doctor sets, it does change slightly. And our voices change every day depending on what we've been doing, where we've been, what we've done the night before. And it does change slightly. And I think it's the third one, it does sound slightly younger, weirdly. There's less of the like high intense rasp and gravel, because one of the first things Nick Briggs said to me was, you got to find a way of doing this that is sustainable, because he did the audiobook for the novel Engines of War. Yeah, because he was doing the War Doctor, he was doing the narration, and he was doing the voice of the Daleks, and he was coughing up a lung by the end of it. So he said, don't do that, basically. Yeah. So I did go back and I watched Crime and Punishment, which was a 3-part serial that John did back in the late 70s or the early 80s. I can't remember which. And that's where the still on the box art, but also the reflection in Night of the Doctor, that's where that comes from. Mm-hmm. So I took that quite literally. So, okay, that's the era we're going for. So I assessed, I just watched all 3 hours of that to just really absorb it. But there's a lovely speech that he has in the first episode that is kind of my key reference point. But all the way through, I try not to use the voice as a crutch and approximate it, because you don't want to sound it so much like John Hurt that it doesn't sound like the War Doctor, and vice versa. So it's you kind of just judge as you go along, really. It's a
Yeah.
funny balancing act, but I didn't go and like order all his filmography off Amazon or anything like that,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't have had the time for a start, and also I'd have probably freaked myself out realizing the full extent of the undertaking and the shadow of the man I'm stepping into the shoes of, because I only saw The Elephant Man relatively recently,
Yeah.
although that's not a great vocal reference because he's covered in makeup and he's playing he was playing a completely different character, not quite using his voice in the
Yeah.
same way. But I'm getting through it, but I've got that sort of pacing and distance where I can appreciate both sides and still have the freedom and not like
Yeah.
that voice in the back of my head saying, "No, this is how John would have done it."
Yeah, you don't want to
because I don't want to be slave to it.
Yeah, you don't want to restrict yourself, because like you
Yeah.
said, it's something you want to be creative with it, rather than, you know, it restricts you in the way that sometimes
And it's
like
got to be
an impression
spontaneous
does
as well.
and things like that. Yeah, definitely. That's a fantastic answer, and thank you again to everybody who sent in your questions. We had loads, and they were all wonderful, and we got to hear about John Bishop's Pringles, so I'm very happy. But we're coming nearer to the end now, which is definitely a shame, because I've really enjoyed this. But we all know beforehand we have the wonderful corridor, which is somewhere here in my house. I'm yet to find it. I'm on an age-old search for this wonderful corridor in my new house. But we're going to see who Jonathan wants to put in the corridor of fame.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting
Dear? Sarah Jane?
Do I have the right?
Some people, small, beautiful events is what life is all about. Nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to make me really
Every great decision creates ripples. Like a huge boulder dropped in a lake.
But it was a childish dream that made you a doctor. You dreamt you could no more.
I'm not just the type. I'm the last of the kind.
Just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are gone in a moment, like breath on a mirror.
I do what I do because it's right! Because it's decent! And above all, it's kind!
Love abides in the face of everything.
So, Jonathon Carley, now is your time to select who you would like to put in the corridor of fame. Obviously, you're the wonderful man that you portray, the War Doctor, Sir John Hurt, is already in.
He's
along
already
with
in
all
there.
the other doctors,
Where
along
he
with
belongs.
Cushing and Martin and all the others. Definitely where he belongs, with some brilliant other names as well. So who would you like to join them?
Well, when you first asked me to come on the show, it was one of the things I immediately thought about, and a name immediately came to mind. But then I thought, but all these other people who, are also great unsung heroes and potentially even more unsung. So I'd love to give other honorable mentions, but I couldn't have walked away from doing this show without putting in my first choice. It's, it was the first choice. It's who my heart says, and it's probably not going to come as a huge surprise to many people. But it is the great, the wonderful, the treasure that is Louise Jameson.
That is lovely. That's a lovely pick. Because of course, am I right in saying she directed the first War Doctor set? Is she directing subsequent ones as well?
Yes, she did the first, and she's done the second, and yeah, so forth.
Wonderful. And of course, you know, I would be remiss to mention again that she's not only a wonderful director, she's also Leela, Warrior of the Seventeen. A fantastic companion. And I mean, what's your, obviously it's quite obvious your reasoning behind it. Obviously, I know that you must have a very close working relationship with her as well now, which is beautiful. But why? What's your reasoning?
Well, yeah, there's the deep personal connection because I mean, the funny thing is we've done so much of this journey separately because we've been working remotely. But the groundwork from day one, when I went in for the audition, she was the one that I read in with, and being there for that day, she's always listening, she's always responding, and when you're in the room with her, you know that she's listening and she's hanging on your every word. She's not humoring you; she's absolutely taking you in, which is why she's so good at what she does, because she's a phenomenal actor, a phenomenal director, as I know everyone has heard and seen. She's a writer, a teacher, and all-round advocate for all things good. She is an absolute treasure. You absolutely feel safe with her, and you trust her implicitly, which with a project of this magnitude you need. I definitely needed it. And to have had that time to really work on this with her and prepare this with her, which, as far as I understand, is I've not heard of it happening with anyone else. I don't know if it has, and it's not been publicized. But to have that time to really build up this role and to take that time to connect with me and teach me and be generous with her experience. When there's someone that you respect and you admire, and they're also being generous with you and giving back to you, it's something you never, ever, ever expect. Like, playing this role is one thing, like you watch Doctor Who and suddenly you're a part of it.
Yeah.
But to have someone who is part of that legacy and part of that journey, then giving back to you it is surreal. It is absolutely surreal. And it's I could have easily been intimidated by being in that presence, but I suppose it's partly my experience elsewhere with after you've done so many jobs, you don't get as starstruck. Some things you do, some things you don't. Depends who it is. But with Louise, like I say, I was waiting at that rehearsal space to do this workshop, thinking I have no idea how today is going to go. But it was incredible, and she taught me so much and stuff I'd taken forward for not just the War Doctor, but other things since. It was a real breakthrough moment for me on my journey of becoming an actor. And as I said before, when someone is investing in you like that, and someone is trusting you, and you've got that connection to work together, you absolutely meet that on that level. So when you're going into the recording session, you're there. You know that you can do this, because I've never been an overly confident person. And I'm sure many other fans will testify to feeling the same way. So to have someone put that time and effort into you is, it means so much. It really does. And she is one of the most generous and kindest people that I've ever met. And she's got 50 years experience in the business. To get be a small speck on that journey is, that's hugely precious to me. And there's a funny thing, this Christmas just gone, I got one of the retro styled like the Mego styled action figures of Leela, And they unwrapped it, and I showed it to my family and said, "That's my boss." Which
Yeah.
is so weird, like coming at it from this other end. It's like, wow, I own an action figure of my boss. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But
That's strange.
you
Well,
know,
that
she's the kind of person that just has time for everyone.
yeah.
And
But it's
you know,
really
nothing is-
lovely that you've come you've come to the corridor, and obviously there's I think it's really wonderful that obviously there's so many obvious things you could say about Louise Jameson, in the fact that, like I said, she's Leela. She was, you know, a wonderful companion to the Doctor in a wonderful time of Doctor Who. You know, part of that golden age. The height of it. Yeah, definitely in classic Who, and she's gone on to, you know, being so many Big Finish audios, and she's done all. She's integral to what Doctor Who is. But you've come at it, and you come with your personal experience of her as a director, and like you said, as a boss, and I imagine as a friend, which is lovely. It's so nice to hear.
Yeah. And you see how aspects of it come through, funnily enough, in Leela, because you know, Louise is so emotionally intelligent, and that is really sort of the key aspect of Leela. Like, you know, yes, she's a quote unquote savage, but she's not stupid at all. She relies on her instinct. She relies on her emotions. She knows when there's something wrong, and she's not any the lesser for that. And you know, she's proud of, you know, her background, who she is. She's brave, and you know, that also feeds into, you know, her connection with the Doctor, her connection with K9, a robot dog, a prop essentially. But Louise is so committed and so absolutely invested in, you know, the feeling of a character, that you absolutely see and feel that, which is why I think the character was so successful, and, you know, fortunately has had the chance to really breathe and, to be honest, I think come into her own on Big Finish. You know, there's been opportunities to really explore her, like Wrath of the Iceni. I think it's the second one that they did with Tom. I think it's Leela and potentially Louise's finest hour as the character, because it's it challenges that relationship, which we never really saw on screen, because you know, Leela had 2 or 3 stories. She was brought in by Philip Hinchcliffe, and he pretty much announced he was leaving as soon as she started. And then she was inherited by Graham Williams, and you know, she didn't quite grow as perhaps the initial vision set out, because you know, it's, you know, it's someone else's baby, really. But like I said, come back round, you've got people who recognize, who appreciate the potential of the character, and it's really come into her own, and it's opened up so many other opportunities for Louise and others, because you know, she's done other series, and Attigirl, the award-winning series that she directed with Helen Goldwyn, incredible stuff. And I can't help but be in awe of her. She's my rock throughout doing all of these. So, Lou, this one's for you.
Oh, that's lovely. And I mean, it would be lovely if she's listening. I know she tweeted about the podcast, about you coming on, which was an absolutely lovely moment for me. I must say, you know, seeing Louise, you know, just randomly tweet about the podcast, it was great. And you know, if she is listening, welcome to the corridor, because you really, really do deserve to be here. You know,
absolutely,
not just for, you know, obviously everything that Jonathan's just said, but you've got a fantastic legacy, and as a spokesperson for the fans, we love you, and we love Leela too. Wonderful pick, really wonderful pick. I love that one. So I mean, that brings us to the end. I mean, it's been a fantastic episode. I've loved this one. Of course, you know, before we
haven't bored the pants off you or anyone listening.
Not at all. Not at all. It's been wonderful. It's been so fun. But of course, there's one question that I have to ask. I'm sorry I have to do this. Every time I ask people this, that they look at me with such pain. Like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you
What
making
are you
me
about
do
to ask
this?
me?
But I'm going to ask the same question again. I'm going to keep doing it because it's always this first bit that people hate. In a sentence, what does Doctor Who mean to you?
The first word that kind of pops into my head is everything. But that makes me sound like a very shallow person. But just to elaborate, I'd say care, kindness, and hope. Because fundamentally, it's a story about a triumph in the face of adversity, both on and off screen, which I think is just such a brilliant message and such a brilliant journey to follow, because so many people consider it their safe place, a place where they do and should feel welcome and feel embraced, that everyone has it in them to be a hero or to be saved. Now, there's no shade on either side of that, because you are worthy of all of that. It exists in all of us. We all have that potential, and we all have the right to experience all that the world, or indeed the universe, has to offer. Because in a world where winning is associated with, well, currently it seems winning is associated with aggression and cruelty and not caring, that there's this beacon that's been constant for more or less 60 years saying there is another way. I think that's so important to myself and to so many other people, and the fact that it has this open door to say you are welcome here is incredible.
Lovely. That was so lovely. Ah, beautiful. And it's been beautiful to speak to you. Jonathan, of course, before you go, I want to give you a bit of time. Plug away. Plug whatever you want to plug. Go ahead.
Well, it would be remiss of me not to mention that The War Doctor Begins Volume 1 is currently available to purchase from bigfinish.com. You can also order all 4 volumes as a bundle. And aside from that...
that was brilliant.
I hope that wasn't too crass.
No.
Aside from that, you can follow me on Twitter at Jonathon_Carley. And I do have a podcast, as previously mentioned, with several other impressionists called We Sound Familiar. It's been a while since we've done an episode, but the real world kind of takes precedence. But we hope to be back soon with more sketches and chat and improv and other wacky goodness with various voices and characters.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And of course, Who Knew is back. You're listening to episode 2 of series 3. Series 1 and 2 are all available to listen. And you'll be getting from here, as you're listening to this, new episodes every week for a good few months. They're available wherever you get your podcasts and also on YouTube. You can watch video versions of the podcast and extra little bits that I'm gonna try and throw out there over the next couple of months. And we're on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast. I'm also on Twitter at Josh Ryan Carr. Feel free to give me a follow. And we're on Instagram, Who Knew DWPod. We're everywhere. We look in your sink or on your lovely red and white platen floor, and I'm probably there. But yeah, it's been again an absolute pleasure, and I will let you, Jonathan, have the final word. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody at home.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Podcast no more.
Beautiful. Oh. Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.